Our next speaker, we have Laura Sick, who is going to give us a crucially important perspective, what it's like to live with an OASI. So Laura Sick is a nurse practitioner and also a mother who suffered OASI during the birth of her son. Laura understands firsthand the challenges that come from experiencing a severe obstetric laceration and traumatic birth. A day that was supposed to be filled with anticipation and joy turned into something very uncertain, and the labor that was meant to bring her closer to her son led her down an unexpected path. I will let her tell this story. Laura, thank you so much in advance for sharing.
Hi, thank you, Amanda, and thank you again, everyone that joined us today. So, this is the first time that I'm speaking publicly about my birth injury and the impact that it's had on my life. When Caroline first invited me to speak at the summit, I initially hesitated. The thought of sharing such a personal experience with strangers felt overwhelming. But as I reflected, I realized that keeping the story to myself would be a disservice if it could help even one person navigate their own birth injury or educate just one provider on how to better support a patient in a similar situation to mine. My purpose today is to shed light on how birth injuries can happen to anybody and how they can profoundly affect postpartum recovery, mental health, and future family planning. So, a brief overview of my birth, or of my birth experience. This was my first pregnancy. Unfortunately, it was uncomplicated. Like the previous speakers had mentioned, there are risk factors associated with OASI, and I would say that I had very few of these risk factors. Generally speaking, I'm 5 foot tall. I weigh just shy of 100 pounds. I ended up delivering a 7 pound, 6 ounce baby boy who was 24 inches in length. Of note, my husband is 6'2". I went into labor spontaneously at 40 weeks and 2 days, and after a prolonged second stage of labor, so 4 hours in total of pushing, I had a forceps assisted delivery. When I reached complete exhaustion, I had asked if a C-section was an option. I was then told it wasn't, as the baby was too far engaged in my pelvis, and my doctor reassured me that with forceps, he could have the baby delivered with my next push. And he was right. My son was born with the next push and pull of the forceps. Prior to this intervention, I recall asking about the risks to the baby with a forceps assisted delivery and was reassured that it was fairly safe. I wish I had thought to ask about risks to myself. However, at the moment, my only priority was delivering the baby safely and as soon as possible. Immediately after delivery, I overheard my doctor asking for suture material. I asked him, "How bad did I tear?" And he told me it was a third degree. So while I had a general understanding of what that meant, I was completely unaware of the potential complications and the long-term effects. After repairing the laceration in the delivery room, my doctor told me that because I was young and I was healthy, I should heal within 6 weeks. I was instructed to schedule my routine 6 week postpartum visit after discharged, and that was the extent of my education on third degree lacerations. As soon as my epidural had worn off, I knew something wasn't right. The pain and pelvic pressure were overwhelming. It felt like I had no pelvic support, as if my muscles had just been torn apart. I was reassured by nursing staff that this was just normal postpartum recovery. Once home, it quickly became evident that my injury was far more severe than I had realized. I couldn't walk or sit due to the immense pain and pressure, and I soon began experiencing complications. At a follow-up appointment just a few days postpartum, I was told that my laceration repair had dehisced, and the best course of action was to allow it to heal by secondary intention. So essentially to rest, keep my legs together, and avoid tension to the site. Days turned into weeks, and my symptoms only worsened. I could barely move. I could stand for no more than a minute or sit without severe pain. I was trying to take care and bond with my newborn baby, yet I was physically unable to do many of the things new moms look forward to. Desperate for answers, I spent countless hours researching obstetric lacerations, hoping for guidance or reassurance. The information available was very limited and discouraging. Despite multiple OBGYN appointments that I had requested, I was repeatedly told that everything would heal with time and that I just needed to be patient. Amid all of this, my frustration and anger with the medical team grew and my mental health deteriorated. I firmly believe that my experience would have been far less traumatic had my physician acknowledged my concerns. provided proper education, and offered additional resources such as pelvic floor physical therapy, a referral to a specialist like a urogynecologist, or mental health support. Instead, I felt that I had to be my own advocate. I couldn't understand how, as a patient, I was expected to accept suffering as a normal part of postpartum recovery. With the help of my husband, who is also in the medical field, he was able to reach out to a colleague who assisted in getting me scheduled with the urogynecologist at a local hospital. So, around 5 weeks postpartum, I saw a surgeon who recommended wound revision and repair. She did suspect that my injuries were more extensive than they had appeared. So, at 6 weeks postpartum is when I was supposed to be all healed and back to myself. That's when I underwent pelvic reconstructive surgery. Post-operatively, the surgeon did share with me that my internal injuries were more severe than she had expected as well. I underwent a colporrhaphy and a perineorrhaphy, which is a surgical procedure to restore the pelvic floor support and repair the torn perineal tissue. She shared with me that she was fairly confident that without this procedure, I would have suffered from chronic pain and long-term complications. Yet, interestingly enough, it was never recommended that I see a urogynecologist. In fact, when I asked if I should be seen by someone, I was told that it was unlikely that surgery would be offered to me and that I didn't need to see a urogynecologist since I wasn't having any active urinary issues. So, my road to recovery after surgery, it was challenging and it came with some complications. However, my experience with this doctor was vastly different from the experience I had with my OBGYN. The surgeon took my concerns seriously. She provided frequent follow up, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, and ensured I had the support I needed. At around 8 weeks post op, the external incision had healed, but the complete internal healing took months. Around 3.5 months postpartum, I was still struggling. I still couldn't walk any significant distance. I couldn't stand while holding my baby or sit comfortably. My injury had taken away more from me than just my mobility. It stole the ability to enjoy those precious early moments with your newborn. I couldn't breastfeed, I couldn't baby wear, I couldn't take a walk around the neighborhood or even, excuse me, even socialize outside of my home. After months of excruciatingly slow recovery, I was convinced that my life as I once knew it was over. How was I supposed to return to my job in the hospital when I couldn't even walk without severe pain? As mentioned by the previous speakers, birth injuries are so isolating, and my mental health declined rapidly. I felt like I was trapped in a cycle of pain, grief, frustration, unable to care for my baby the way I'd imagined, and I felt invisible to the healthcare system. Thankfully, a friend connected me with a psychiatric nurse practitioner who specialized in maternal health, and she scheduled me for a telemed visit. I was eventually prescribed an SSRI, which helped tremendously in time, and I'm forever grateful for the support of my friends who advocated for me during this time, but I can't help but wonder why this resource wasn't recommended by my practice, by the OBGYN. During my research for birth injuries, I stumbled upon Caroline's Facebook group and began participating in her weekly group sessions. I'm so grateful that a space like Solace exists to shed light on birth injuries and provide women with the support that they so desperately need. Healing from my initial tear and then from surgery took around 5 months before felt any semblance of normalcy. My recovery involved meticulous wound care, weekly pelvic floor PT, daily pelvic exercises, mental health counseling, time, and a lot of patience. Birth injuries don't just affect the individual, they affect the entire family. My husband had to take nearly 5 months off of work to help support me and our baby. And while I'm fortunate that we had this option, I recognize that many others do not. And it's easy to assume that the medical team doesn't truly appreciate the lasting physical and emotional impact these injuries have on families. For them, this is one work day and just another patient, but for those living with the aftermath, the journey can stretch far beyond what is initially expected or addressed. Where I'm at now, so fast forward to today, I'm almost 2 years postpartum. I would say I'm about 85% recovered. I still experience daily pelvic pressure, which is a constant reminder of what I went through. However, I am back to work, I'm exercising again, and I'm able to do most of the things I once thought that I had lost forever. Before this experience, I had always envisioned having 2 children. However, after everything I've been through, I know that another pregnancy would not be in my best interest. While my physician has advised that any future delivery would require a C-section rather than another vaginal birth, I can't imagine carrying another pregnancy with a compromised pelvic floor. The risks and potential complications are simply too great. So at times, I can't help but feel a sense of envy towards those who have had a positive birth experiences, especially women who have undergone C-sections. While I'm truly happy for my friends who have delivered their babies safely, I can't help but reflect on how different my own journey could have been without this injury. Sharing this story is difficult, but I do so with the hope that it will help others feel less alone and encourage meaningful change in how birth injuries are recognized, treated, and supported. Truly, no one should have to navigate this journey alone, and no woman should feel dismissed when seeking care after a birth injury. Thank you, everybody, for sticking around and listening to my story.
Wow. Thank you so much, Laura. I know how hard it is to share about something so personal, having suffered a tear myself. So thank you so much for sharing such a vulnerable story with us and giving just some real perspective on what this means, right? We've heard about the science, we've heard about statistics and data and incidence rates and things like that, but how it actually impacts your day-to-day life, right? That's something that was missing so far. A couple of questions. Does your OB know about how extensive your recovery was? I'm curious, did you stick with that OB? Did you change providers?
Yeah, so truthfully, no. The provider that delivered my baby, I saw him postpartum a couple of times. He was very dismissive,
Mhm,
and I elected to switch practices and I went to a different hospital. I flirted with the idea of reaching out to the practice and just letting them know what I went through, but here I am 2 years out, and that isn't something I've pursued at this
mhm.
juncture.
Right. Okay. So if you could talk to that provider, or let's just generalize it even, right? Because that might be might be too much. If you could ensure that OBGYNs and other providers and practitioners on today's call, could remember one thing about your experience, what would you hope that they take away here?
I would hope that they take away that this is a long-acting event that, these patients aren't going home and recovering in that 6-week window that they claim we're gonna get better in, and I know the previous speakers talked about these bundle packages and these resources, so I would really I would really hope that these, providers would be able to give their patients all of the resources that they have and not make them feel so alone.
Mhm. And, I know that Caroline mentioned this, I mentioned it, it sounds like you as well, have some knowledge of health, right? You're a nurse practitioner, so you had some understanding, right, of when things weren't right. Thankfully, at least, so you had some ability to keep asking those hard questions. What advice do you have for other women who maybe are still in the early days of their OAC? Now that you're 2 years out, if you could go back and um, hold Laura's hand from 2 years ago when you were really in the thick of this, what advice would you give other women in this situation?
I would advise them to continue to be an advocate for themselves. Like I mentioned, it's extremely isolating, and I do have medical background, and so I really feel for those who don't because they may not know what resources are out there, what questions to ask, and that's why I'm so grateful that a group like this exists so that women have a little bit more information and know how they can best advocate for themselves. And I would also tell that person freshly postpartum that they have to be so incredibly patient with themselves and that truly time does heal, but it is a slow process.
Mhm. Thank you. That's good advice. Definitely, it is our healing journey is not the typical postpartum recovery timeline. So definitely truth to that. And this person just wants to ask where you're from again. I did not include that in my
Oh,
introduction of
yeah.
you.
So I'm from upstate New York.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you so much, Laura, for sharing your experience. And I didn't flip the slide to the Q&A. We appreciate you sharing your truth and your experience with us. It also should be said, we know how courageous you have to be to share something so truly personal and utterly challenging during such a vulnerable time in your life, and during a time that is also so beautiful. So carrying that duality can be even more challenging. And so once again, I will say I wish Kaylee was here and feeling better today, because her session on trauma is so beautiful, and I'm really excited to record with her later and share that out with all of you, because I do think it will open your eyes, I think, to navigating tears like this, and just being patient with yourself and understanding the nature of trauma. Um, after a delivery that doesn't go the way we expect. So stay tuned. We will get that out to you all. Stories like this, like Laura's story, really do help us in the OAC community find hope and each other, and break down stigma of discussing such topics with the world that are often not shared about, right? Childbirth is beautiful. It's a wonderful time to become a mother, and that's usually what is put on a pedestal. So it's very important to Solace to elevate voices like this. So thank you, Laura, again for sharing. As you've all heard, everybody who attended today, OASI impacts us long after the initial experience of the tear. It's more than just a memory. It's more than a repair surgery. It's more than that one day in the labor and delivery room. These impacts can be lifelong. Physically, mentally, emotionally, they can impact financial security, family planning decisions, relationships with your partner. They can impact the occupation you have. As you have seen and heard, they can change our identity. So I'm thankful to Solace. Our mission is to help create a world where women's birth experiences are improved through awareness and informed decision making. In the future, we hope to establish that standardization that Dr. Freeman was telling us about, that they have over in the UK. We hope to offer more continuing education courses like this to really get education in the room from day one of people's training, as they go out into this birthing space. We have a lot of ways for you to get involved if you are interested. For women suffering OASI, we do offer those support groups that Laura mentioned. You can find information about joining on our website. For students, graduate students, we do host interns every single semester. A lot of our students are pursuing degrees in medicine, nursing, public health, nonprofit leadership. Many of our student interns have used the opportunity of our mentorship to fulfill applied practice experiences and degree requirements, and we have benefited so much from their hard work, even in today's summit. And we also accept volunteers. So if you're interested in getting involved, we would love to have you. If you're interested in sharing your story like Laura did today, we are also interested in connecting with you to help elevate your voice and continue to break down that stigma. You can follow us on LinkedIn. Caroline has put some of our handles in the chat. We also have an Instagram, and we have an email address if you do want to get more involved. And finally, as a 501(c)(3), we are a registered nonprofit organization. Educational opportunities like this, the management of our free support groups, and the development of our resources and trainings are all made possible by generous donations of money and time. All donations are tax deductible, so if you feel compelled to donate, we are always so grateful for our donors and support. You can do that by clicking on the blue donate button at our website's homepage. And finally, what most of you are waiting for, surveys and forms and continuing education credits. Please submit an evaluation for us. We hope to offer additional opportunities just like this in the future, so we really value your input. It is anonymous. The survey to evaluate the summit experience today and how well we did on hitting our learning objectives is anonymous, and it should only take you about 5 minutes to complete. The link for that will automatically pop up in this browser once I close the webinar. If you don't catch it in the few minutes after the webinar closes, you will receive an email post-summit within 24 hours with that link. So don't worry. If you are seeking continuing education credits with AHEC, nursing, CHES, or if you just want a certificate of attendance, following the evaluation, the bottom question there will have an additional link for you to click in order to request your continuing ed credits. That will also be included in the email that you receive within 24 hours. If you have any issues or concerns, you can contact us at contact@solaceforwomen.org. I want to extend a huge thank you to our speakers, Dr. Bob Freeman and Masick. Thank you so much for overcoming the time difference and being here today and supporting the mission of Solace here in the United States. We really appreciate everything you're doing in the OASI space already. Thank you to our expert panelists, Dr. Cynthia Brumfield, Dr. Holly Richter, Dr. Katie Moyes, Dr. Julie Cantor, and Laura Sick. And thank you, Kaylee Summers, even though you weren't here, for providing so much education, best practice insight, and practical advice today. The summit would not have been possible without all of you and your hard work over the last few months. So thank you for making this event a reality. We really appreciate you so, so much. And thank you to our audience. We are overwhelmed with the support we received and the number of registrations for our inaugural summit. So thank you for attending today and for your engagement. We appreciate the time you took to support us in our mission. Please follow us on Instagram. We are hosting a campaign this week for OASI Awareness Week. We have some international partners that are also gearing up to share about OASI around the globe. So keep an eye out on Instagram. Keep in touch. Thank you so much for attending. That's a wrap.
Sorry, I'm just answering some of the Q&As came in. This was really great. Amanda, you did a fantastic job.
Thank
It
you.
was
I am
awesome.
gonna
I just wanted to share that with you. It was super great. So, and Amanda, I will go ahead and just get I'll do a PDF and just send that over to the both of you so that you can like post it or whatever. Um, I'll probably put these like links to all these things on my own website, but I think for purposes of this, I think that's totally fine for you guys to just post the PDF of the slides, and then people can just go look for those resources themselves. Um, and thank you so much for including me. I hope that
thank
it
you,
met the
Julie.
mark for you guys.
Absolutely. This was
Yeah, it was
fantastic. Thank
fantastic.
you. Yeah, we'll
Thank you
follow
so
up
much.
to get all the Q&As we missed live out to folks. So
For
thank
sure.
you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Thank
All
you. Bye
right.
bye.
Bye.
I don't see any other questions, so I'm going to end this right now.
Okay. All right. I'll see you in a
Thanks.
little bit.
Bye.
Bye.